Well, well, well. The reckoning is upon us, and Bandai have finally released their newest wave of bans that are gonna hit the One Piece trading card game. They have banned Reject, Great Eruption, and the Sakazuki leader entirely. At the time of this video, as far as we know, these bans do not affect the West and are only affecting the East at the start of April. Now, there is speculation that this may eventually hit the Western meta, but as of right now, we don't know yet. So with the new wave of bans that are hitting the game, the question is, of course, did they get it right? Before we get started, just wanted to shout out the coffee link. If you guys want to support the channel monetarily, that's a great way to do it. And if not, like, commenting, and subscribing also helps the channel a lot. So anyways, thanks y'all for the support. All right, first, let's talk about the cards individually and why they were banned. Let's start by talking about Great Eruption. Great Eruption is a one-cost event that is a Navy subtype that says, main, draw one card, then give up to one of your opponents -2 to their cost during this turn. And it has a trigger, your opponent trashes one card from hand. Now, I feel pretty redeemed about my previous video talking about Great Eruption and why that would be the choice of card that I would have picked to ban to reduce the power of black. You know, generally black has been a color that has very powerful removal at their disposal, but it's usually at the cost of cards in their hand. As black's identity starts to more heavily rely on using their graveyard as a resource, I think that Great Eruption stands out as a problem card. Great Eruption directly alleviates a lot of the weaknesses with black, and I think that's one of the reasons why they chose to pick this card. To me, this was a great ban and one that I had called out previously. Next, let's take a look at the card Reject. Reject is a 4-cost event from Sky Island or Shandora Warrior that says main, choose one of the following. KO up to one of your opponent's 5-cost or lower characters, or if your opponent has 1 life, deal 1 damage to them, then add the top of your life to your hand. It also has a trigger that says draw 1 card. So this was not a card that was on my radar for a ban because I was looking at it from a OPO6 standpoint, whereas these bans that they've announced are for OPO7 and beyond. Now, yellow overall is a contentious color based off of the discourse that I see online. While it has never been the most dominant deck in the tournament, it is ever present and one that I think a lot of people are frustrated with when they play against it. Also, like I said in my previous video, I think yellow is receiving a lot of cards that tend to be a little bit too good everywhere, where they're good in hand, they're good when played, and also good from life. I think that's overall kind of a problem trend with yellow. With that in mind, the cards that I would have picked to be banned are some of the ones that I think caused the most frustration among the player base, which is the defensive triggers like Amaru and or Beige. So that's why I think it's a little bit interesting that they chose to pick a card like Reject. However, when you take a look at Reject as a card, you can see exactly why it was banned. Compared to the other direct damage effects that exist in the game, Reject is actually very, very efficient in terms of Dawn cost. Usually these effects cost you basically your entire turn when you look at Kaido's leader ability or the Tenmom. Because those effects usually take up your entire turn, it's hard to have efficient attacks after you use the effect. What makes Reject an incredible finisher is that it only costs 4 to get the effect, which means you have 6 whole Dawn left to go and attack your opponent. So while I think this ban doesn't exactly hit the general frustrations that people have against yellow, I do think that this is a very good ban for reducing some of the more powerful effects that exist in yellow and reducing some of the power of the big yellow decks like Katakuri and Nell. And now let's talk about Sakazuki. Where to begin with this guy? First off, getting a deck ban sucks. I've been there with other TCGs and it's a really bad feeling. I myself enjoyed Sakazuki a lot and I thought the deck was a lot of fun to play and pilot and navigate the complex lines that it has. So I empathize with people who were disappointed that the entire leader got banned. However, taking a step back for the disappointment, there are some clear problems with the design of the leader that need to be addressed. So personally, I think that Sakazuki single-handedly makes it hard to make blue a stronger color. Blue in One Piece has access to the most powerful form of removal, which is bottom decking. The thing with this removal though is that it's usually limited either by the cost that it takes to actually cast the event, or it's limited in terms of what it's able to target. Most blue decks are forced to use more clunky spells like 3000 Worlds or Red Rock, which are more expensive, take most of your turn to be able to hit relevant targets. The issue is that Sakazuki is uniquely able to use the blue events that would normally not target very much, but because of his pairing with black, is now able to use them at a hyper efficient level. Cards like Houndblaze and Ame no Mukuro in most blue decks doesn't pose a threat. However, in Sakazuki, those cards become insane. Simply put, Sakazuki's color pairing itself is a powerful asset to his toolkit. Of course, color pairing isn't the only thing that makes him strong. It also is the fact that he has 2 uniquely powerful effects stapled onto him. What sets apart Sakazuki's abilities, however, is their minimal cost to utilize. Both of Sakazuki's effects don't cost any Dawn, which makes him super Dawn efficient. So let's talk about his abilities really quick. The less problematic of his 2 abilities is the ability that shrinks when he attacks. However, that is still just a very uniquely good ability where he doesn't have to utilize Dawn to get the shrink, which again puts more targets that he's able to utilize when shrinking and using his removal. The real problem ability, in my opinion, is his ability to discard a card and draw a card once per turn. This is the key component to why Sakazuki is such a great tournament deck. It's because that Sakazuki is able to consistently filter out his hand, and so basically he's able to replace the worst card in his hand for something in his deck. On top of that, because he is a partially black leader, he has access to using his trash as a resource. Now, that means that his discard effect is not really a cost, it actually just helps him. And this is obviously an over-exaggeration, but it often feels like you're drawing 2 cards per turn with his ability. So with all these factors combined, Sakazuki is just a overwhelmingly powerful leader that I think is actually problematic for the future of the game. So from Bandai's perspective, I can see why they would ban the leader even if it sucks for people who wanted to play the deck. I am curious though with the new replacement leader that's supposed to be in place of the old Sakazuki. Like, the effect is hilariously worse on this card, but I am curious to see if this leader has any shot at being remotely competitive. Having taken a look at the bans, I can say that I can understand why Bandai have chosen these cards as their targets for bans. Now, that isn't to say that Bandai is free of criticism here. One of my biggest complaints with Bandai is their lack of communication with their community. Regarding bans and restrictions, I think it's super important for the devs to communicate with their community that there are cards that are on their watch list. TCGs are expensive and decks are expensive, and we know as One Piece players that some of these cards are outrageously expensive. I think that if Bandai was a little bit better with communication, at least people could be more prepared to switch decks or be prepared to not buy into decks that are going to be banned eventually. Also, it helps just understanding Bandai's perspective on what they feel is the philosophy for the game, and I think overall, just more communication is just better anyways. Right now, as far as the West is concerned, we get absolutely no communication from Bandai, and we're just kind of left wondering things from a Twitter bot that randomly tweets things out. I don't know how it is for Japan, but at least they have a commentary duo with the Macaroni Bros. It's Gavin and Kitaba, who do their own like little community shows and stuff like that. Like, I think some of that stuff should also exist in the West, but then again, I don't know how much they communicate with the Japanese audience as well. The big thing, however, to me is just there just needs to be more communication overall, and I think that people would be able to put more trust in Bandai if they were more communicative with their community. And I think my next complaint is something that I think a lot of people feel, but I do think that one of the biggest criticisms for One Piece overall is the fact that the West and the East have these staggered releases. Now, there's a lot of problems that come with this, but I think in terms of the bans and restrictions, there's a very specific problem to it. Since we're always several releases behind Japan and we always inherit Japan's, hand-me-down meta, because that they get the bans before us, it puts us in a really awkward spot. As players, do we play these decks that are going to eventually be banned? Or is it a type of thing where they're going to change the bans when it finally gets to us because they've done that before? In general, it just puts us in a really awkward spot for how we are supposed to optimize our game experience for the future. This will always be my #1 wish for this game, and it's cool to see that other Bandai games are finally getting these synchronized global releases, and I'm hoping that it comes soon for One Piece as well. So to answer the title of the video, did Bandai get these cards right? I actually think they did, and that might be a little contentious. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. That's it for this video. Thanks to the people who have subscribed to my Ko-fi. If you guys want a shout out, you can go to my Ko-fi link that's in the description. And otherwise, I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks so much. Have a good one.